Jason hated working the night shift, but he was glad it was over. And looking over and seeing the picture of his daughter that he placed on his dashboard of his car brought a smile to his face, because he knew that after getting some much needed rest, he'd be able to spend the rest of the weekend with his daughter, as they both planned to go to a carnival the following day. But in that same moment, oddly enough, Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the car in his rear view. And Jason couldn't really understand it or where the feeling was coming from, so he just dismissed it and thought he was being paranoid, and he just ignored it. A few moments later, Jason pulls up into his driveway. And as Jason is getting out of his car, packing up his things, and thinking about embracing his sleeping daughter, and thinking about how much he was going to need to pay the babysitter, a shot rang out. And in that moment, Jason ducked, and then another one. And in that same moment, he realized that somebody was shooting at him. So without thinking, instinctively, Jason took cover behind his car, grabbed his Glock 23, angled his sights, and in that very moment, the only thing that was going through his mind was Jessica, Jessica, Jessica. You see, Jessica was Jason's daughter, and he knew in that moment, while he was being shot at, that he needed to do everything in his power to get back to Jessica. But something went horribly wrong. You see, Jason lived in New York, and in New York, you're required to only carry 7 rounds in your handgun. So as Jason is pulling the trigger, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, and eventually getting to 7, Jason heard the loudest sound he's ever heard in his life. Click. And Jason wasn't the only person that heard that sound. The people who were shooting at Jason, the guys that had been following Jason for the last 3 miles, who intended on robbing Jason of everything he owned, they heard the click too. So they walked over to Jason and they executed him right there in his driveway. And they executed him with their Glock 23, which carried 13 rounds, even though the state law required that it be 7. You see that? I can do that too. I can pull at emotion and tug at the heartstrings of America and get them to behave irrationally and make decisions that aren't really advantageous to them. And I think that's wrong. I think at the end of the day, when we start thinking about the policies and the things we want to implement in the society to make us safer, we need to look at the hardcore facts, not manipulating people's emotions. That gets us nowhere, especially when the things that you're trying to implement aren't going to do anything. If anything, make it worse for the law-abiding citizens of this country. Limiting magazine capacity, banning assault rifles, that does nothing but take the guns and the means to protect themselves out of the people who obey the law. These people aren't the problem to begin with. Criminals aren't going to turn their guns in droves after you implement a law. You're honestly going to tell me that a criminal who has a Glock 23 that carries 13 rounds is going to artificially limit his magazine to 7 rounds because the law tells him to while he's about to commit a crime? That's insane. And it's wrong.